Hi everyone, welcome to the Access channel. My name is Maria Paul and I will be giving a brief talk on climate change. So far we are on the last section of why the Earth is habitable. So please make sure that you guys have looked at all the other slides so that everything makes sense and it links up. And in the last talk, we spoke about human evolution, and in the last 100,000 years, we have made enormous progress in terms of science, technology, medicine, and industries. Unfortunately, this industrialization came at a cost because the byproduct of industrialization was CO2, which is capable of changing climate. So this is what my talk today consists of. We'll go through a brief introduction. Then we go through the driving forces, the effects of climate change, Africa and climate change, how we can address climate change, and we'll end off with the conclusion. So before we look at some of the details of climate change, let's look at some of the basic concepts. I'm pretty sure that all of you at least once in your lifetime has encountered the words climate change. In fact, climate change is said to be the biggest threat facing humanity today. So what exactly is climate change? Well, simply put, climate change is the change in climate. This definition may seem a bit redundant, but it is the most simplistic and useful. I mean, of course, you can expand on this definition. There are many different ways one can define climate change. For example, you can say that climate change is a change in global or regional climate attributed largely to the increased levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide produced by fossil fuels. Okay, so moving on, there are two main causes of climate change: anthropogenic, which is basically human-caused, or naturally induced. So anthropogenic causes would be things such as increased greenhouse gases, which I will get to in a minute. Deforestation, because we know if we cut down the trees, then they won't be there to absorb the excess of CO2. And increased vehicles, which also emit a lot of greenhouse gases, and land use changes, such as like cutting down a huge forest to make area for residential or for mining companies. Natural induced things can be things such as forest fires, which causes the release of CO2 into the air. Volcano eruptions, which can also release greenhouse gases, but can also produce like a cooling effect if it blocks out the sun. Decreased carbon sinks. Basically, carbon sinks are anything that absorb carbon dioxide. For example, our trees or ocean. In fact, our oceans are our biggest carbon sinks. They absorb a lot of CO2. So if for some weird reason our oceans and our trees were to disappear, there won't be anything much absorbing the excess of carbon dioxide. And finally, solar output, which is basically put if the sun came closer to the earth, making it hotter. And of course, this list is not by any means exhaustive, and there are a lot of other examples from both of these categories that you can put in. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about greenhouse gases and how they contribute to the increased temperature on Earth. If you remember from our light and air talk, you'll remember that greenhouse gases are things such as CO2, methane, CFC, ozone. So basically how greenhouse gases work. During the day, the sun shines through the Earth's atmosphere, and at night, the Earth's surface cools, releasing the same heat back. But some of this heat is trapped by the greenhouse gases. So obviously, if there's more and more greenhouse gases being accumulated onto the Earth's atmosphere, more and more heat will get trapped, making the Earth warmer and warmer. So these are basically graphs showing you how temperature has been steadily increasing in the last couple of years. So what are the effects of climate change? Well, there are a lot of effects, and just to discuss a few. Firstly, there will be effect on wildlife, and there would be more increased natural disasters such as flooding, droughts, or fires, which will become more and more frequent. Polar ice caps will melt, resulting in sea level rise, which can potentially flood coastal areas. And as I mentioned before, the oceans absorb a lot of CO2, and today the oceans are absorbing so much CO2 from the atmosphere, it's damaging the marine environment by causing something called ocean acidification. And of course, climate change can also affect humans. For example, there's been reports of increased respiratory problems and heart diseases. So, we can't talk about climate change without talking about Trump. Trump doesn't believe in climate change. Trump thinks that climate change is a hoax invented by the Chinese to make the US manufacturing less competitive. So why is mentioning Trump and climate change important? Well, as you know, America is one of the most powerful countries in the world, and how Trump handles climate change will result in how other countries also handle climate change. Also, America produces a lot of greenhouse gases. In fact, they contribute to the most. Unfortunately, the effects of this is not felt by America. It is actually felt by the less developed countries or the developing countries, such as Africa. So even though the developed countries contribute to the most to the climate change, it is the developing or the underdeveloped that actually feels the consequences. And I want you guys to take a look at the second quote. By the way, these are all the things that he said on his Twitter account. He says that it's snowing and freezing, it's freezing and raining in New York City, whatever happened to climate change. What we need to realize that climate change does not necessarily mean that every surface on the Earth's region will get warmer. In fact, there will be some places in Earth that might actually get colder. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about climate change and how it affects Africa. Well, firstly, climate change can impact Africa by making it food insecure. Food security consists of three components: food availability, food access, and food utilization. All of three combine to form food security. So, food availability basically is the actual physical food being available. So because of the elevated CO2 levels, it can cause effect changes and variations in temperature, precipitation, growing season. It can have more increased pests and diseases in crops, which will make it very difficult for a region to actually grow food. So food access is basically an individual or a household being able to access food. So even though the food is available, meaning that there is food like in the grocery stores, people are not actually being able to access it because climate change can affect things like their income or their jobs. So sometimes they won't have enough money to go and access it. And also if somebody has an illness like malaria or HIV, this also further hampers their ability to acquire food. And finally, nutrient access, which is also utilization, is the nutrients of food. So there's been reports saying that because of the increased CO2 levels, that nutrients in food is going down, for example, like starch and potatoes. And also, as I mentioned before, if you have an illness like HIV, your body's ability to absorb nutrients is also hampered. So this in turn, you have a problem with nutrient access. So climate change also affects water. And we know South Africa is a water scarce country and that we are in the middle of a drought and that water restrictions has been imposed. And about 64% of Africans rely on water that is limited and highly variable. Nearly 13% of African population experiences drought-related stress once in each generation. So this is basically a map showing you which of the countries in Africa is most likely to suffer from water scarcity by the year 2025. And as you can see, South Africa is one of them. So what can we do about climate change? Well, there are two measures we can employ: adaptation and mitigation. Adaptation is adapting to a life in changing climate. The goal is to reduce our vulnerability to the harmful effects of climate change. Adaptation is less sexier than mitigation, but unfortunately it's an urgent matter because climate change is happening right now. Mitigation, on the other hand, is reducing climate change or reversing the effects of climate change. So it's to manage and stabilize greenhouse gases. So obviously what we should all be aiming for is mitigation. While adaptation is short-term, mitigation is long-term. And this Venn diagram basically shows some of the various adaptation and mitigation things you can employ. So finally, how does this all link to South Africa, and why is South Africa such a special place? Well, to answer that question, we need to realize that South Africa is a very diverse country, and not just in biodiversity. We need to remember that climate change, it's an economic problem. It's a social problem, an environmental problem, but it's also a political problem. So in South Africa, we are very diverse in all of these sectors. For example, we have an economy which we know as a dualistic economy, which means we have very rich people and we have very poor people. As for our biodiversity, we have so many plants, we have a lot of animals, we have different kinds of biomes, and we have a lot of oceans. So studying climate change in South Africa, I would say it's ideal because we have so many different scenarios and we can predict what will happen in each of these different scenarios and how it will affect very specific things in a country, for example. So to conclude, I'm just going to wrap up what we learned. We've learned that climate change can be caused by humans and can also be caused by natural, but today it's being caused by humans more than it is being caused naturally. And we've also learned that the impact of climate change has on Africa, and also the various adaptation and mitigation measures. So in the next talk, we're going to be looking at human population and how we are not just putting CO2 into the Earth's atmosphere, but we are putting more and more people into the Earth whom all aspire to have a Western lifestyle, producing more and more CO2 waste. Thank you.